Hey everyone, welcome back to another CollectA review. Today we're taking a look at their new Deluxe Spinosaurus. Another day, another Spinosaurus figure. There's been a big boom in Spinosaur figures the last few years. Toy companies have been basically in a race to constantly keep producing the most accurate version of Spinosaurus. That's because our understanding of this animal has been constantly changing, especially the last few years. And CollectA's always been kind of ahead of the curve versus other companies. They're always pretty quick to get out the most accurate version of a figure. They were the first ones a few years ago to produce the first quadrupedal Spinosaurus figure, and now we have a more accurate version just a few short years later with this new 2022 offering. This figure is part of CollectA's Deluxe line. I'm getting this figure from MiniZoo. It retails for around $40, and if you want to pick one up for yourself, I'll leave a link down below in the description to MiniZoo. Now, before we throw this figure up on the turntable, just like most CollectA Deluxe figures, you do get a little booklet with some information about Spinosaurus, and you always get this attached 1/40 scale human figure, which is really nice. You know, you can display it next to your figures to give a sense of scale. So that is pretty much it for the packaging. Let me take this off. Let's throw this swimming Spinosaurus up on the turntable and take a closer look. And let's start a nice 360-degree view of this figure. This is a really good size figure. Of course, it's part of their Deluxe line, but it's a really sizable figure, and that's one thing I like about CollectA. Their figures aren't overly expensive, and they always seem to strike the right balance between accuracy and affordability. And I definitely like this version much better than their first attempt at a quadrupedal Spinosaurus. Gone are those crocodile-like scoots all over the body. I never liked how some companies gave Spinosaurus those crocodile-like scales. I know it kind of looks like a crocodile, but I just never liked it. It never really appealed to me. So thankfully, this figure has a much more natural looking scale pattern all over the body. The color scheme is very subtle and natural looking. The only bright coloration is the red along the frill and a little splash of red on the head crest. And as you can see, it's sculpted in a swimming position. You know, the most recent study on Spinosaurus showed it had very dense bones, which means it was well suited for an aquatic lifestyle. So I guess you could say the Spinosaurus figure is now super accurate, and I think the swimming pose looks very natural on it. Much better than the swimming pose that Safari did with theirs a couple years ago. That one just looked really weird to me, but this one looks nice and natural, nice fluid movement with the sculpt. With the way the hind legs and front legs are swept back. Just very nice and appealing looking figure. And if you're wondering what stands I'm using, those are those clear acrylic stands that come with some of the PNSO theropod figures. And I gotta say, it works quite well in this figure. It gives it a nice, as it raises off the ground, looks like it's swimming. And this is probably how it's gonna be displayed on my shelf. And now for some measurements. This figure is a whopping 15 inches long from the tip of the snout to the end of that paddle tail, and about 4¼ inches tall to the highest point of the sail. So Spinosaurus in real life was a very large animal, between 49 and 52 feet long. So with those measurements, I put this figure nicely in that 1/40 scale range. And now let's zoom in and take a look at some of the finer details on the figure. Starting with the head, that is a nicely sculpted Spinosaurus head. You can see the head crest up here is picked out in bright orange paint, and you have a little bit of a white stripe on the top of the snout. Let me just adjust my hand. This figure is so long, it's kind of hard to juggle in front of the camera. You can see the nostrils are recessed back. The eye is painted that typical straight black that most CollectA figures have. And then going down to the jaw, it does have an articulated jaw. And I've always said articulated jaws are not CollectA's strong suit, but they did a pretty good job with them. With this one, it's one of the better articulated jaws I've seen on their figures. You see the gum tissue is painted a gray color. The teeth are all nicely sculpted and painted, and then inside the mouth, you can see the tongue has a little bit of a gloss coat on it. It's painted in pink. And let's just take a look at the roof of the mouth. The camera light doesn't really want to get in there, but you can kind of see right there. You do have a couple nasal passages sculpted on the roof of the mouth. That's a detail I always like to point out because I like it when sculptors take that extra time to add that little detail. I always think that's a great touch, even though a lot of people probably won't notice it. And then going down to the neck, you can see all this nice natural scale detail. The scales are a little bit oversized. You do have all these large osteoderms peppered throughout, but it has a really, really nice texture to it. I love this row of short spikes that is actually 3 rows on the top of the neck, and it stops just before the frill. They are painted in an off-white color, and let's get the camera to focus in on that a little bit. And then the underside of the throat, you got these larger belly scales. You know, those are kind of crocodile-like, but it's not as bad as like the crocodile-like scoots on the top of the back, so those don't really bother me. I like the nice little baggy throat it has. And then going down to the main body, you can see more of those large osteoderms sprinkled throughout. Main body is different shades of brown. It has a nice dark brown wash to bring out all that nice scale detail. The arms are nicely sculpted. They are swept back. The animal is obviously in a swimming position. And then turn it over, you can see the large thumb claw is nicely sculpted. They are picked out in black paint. And then going up to the frill is really nicely done. You have some nice white stripe in there mixed in with this nice dry brushing of red, and you have all these white spikes all on top of the sail. Really, really nicely done. And then going down to the very short hind legs, they're sculpted in a nice natural looking swimming position. And then let's look at the feet from over here. You can see the fourth toe, or the hallux, is nicely sculpted. When the animal was standing, the fourth toe would touch the ground. A lot of theropods couldn't do that, but Spinosaurus apparently could, and it looks like the feet are sculpted with some wetting to help it with its aquatic habits. And then going down to the tail, one has the new, accurate paddle-like tail, and it is a huge tail. Looking at it from the top, you can see it starts with a thick tail base and then quickly tapers off to give it that nice sweeping motion. A lot of nice detail on the tail. You got more of those large osteoderms and all that brown coloration and that cream coat for the underside. So yeah, all in all, they did a really, really nice job with this figure. And I have to say, they definitely improved a little bit on their articulated jaw. Looks nice, and it actually closes pretty much flush, unlike some other figures where it just doesn't look right, like the Ceratosaurus and Torvosaurus. So yeah, they did a pretty good job on this figure. I like it a lot. And oh my goodness, I almost forgot to do our dinosaur butthole check. We always have to check in on the infamous CollectA dirty cloacas. This one isn't so bad. It's not as flavor blasted as it is on some other figures, but there's the cloaca slit right there. And you have just a little bit of smuts on the outside. You'd think that would wash off with the animal always swimming around in water. Moving on with comparisons, let's compare it with some other Spinosaur figures. Here it is with Safari Limited's Baryonyx, and here is CollectA's. They did do a deluxe version of their Barry, but I didn't get it because I just did not like how the articulated jaw look, and why not? Here's our little 1/40 scale human that comes with the Spinosaurus. And next up, here is Safari's old Suchomimus, and here is Dino Hazard's Irritator. And fun fact, Irritator is what my wife calls me after I have a few beers. And let's do some Carcharodontosaurus comparisons because it did live alongside Spinosaurus. Here is CollectA's take. And next, let's get him off to the side before he knocks over everything on the side of my review table. Here is PNSO's version. I'm going to hold it because the Spinosaurus is actually using one of the stands meant for this figure. I don't feel like it knocking into the Spino. And lastly is my current favorite Carcharodontosaurus, the GR Toys version. And now let's do some T-Rex comparisons because we always have to do that when we're talking about Spinosaurus. So thank you very much, JP3. This is probably going to look really, really stupid. Here is CollectA's Feather T-Rex. Let me just pull the camera out so you can see how they stack up next to each other. And let's move this big feathered beast off to the side. Next up is Safari's feathered version, and lastly, here it is with PNSO's Wilson. And I think Wilson and the Spinosaurus actually look really nice next to each other. I think they scale reasonably well. And let's move on with some Spinosaurus comparisons. Here it is with Papo's, which is obviously based off the JP3 version. And next up here is CollectA's slightly older attempt at Spinosaurus. Like I said, this was the first quadrupedal Spinosaurus figure on the market. They actually did 3 versions. They have this walking version, they have a swimming version, and then they have a deluxe version of the swimming one. And what a vast improvement this 2022 version is over these older figures. I only picked up the small one because same thing. I didn't like the jaw articulation on the deluxe one, but you can see what I was talking about on this older figure. You know, that crocodile looking tail with that scalation. Just really didn't like that too much. So yeah, this newer version is definitely far superior. And next is last year's Safari Limited, which is an improvement over their larger swimming one that came out a couple years prior. You know, it's a small figure, but if you're on a budget and you don't have a lot of room, this is definitely a good one to go with. And next up here is Papo's massive Spinosaurus, and you can see how those stack up. I remember, you know, Papo kind of struck gold early. They gave it a controversial paddle tail before that was a thing, but hey, good on them. Even a blind squirrel can find a nut once in a while. And next up is GR Toys Spino, which was the first Spino figure on the market to have a paddle tail. Whoops, zoomed out a little too much. Still another fine figure. That's the good thing about Spinosaur figures. There are a lot of options out there. There is one in every price point for every collector. So if you're a Spinosaur fan, the pickings are really good. And lastly, here is PNSO's take on Spinosaurus, another fine figure. But there's something to point out. This large collecting one is a $40 figure, and so is this one right here. The collecting one's probably like 40% bigger. That's just something to keep in mind. But I consider these two right here to be like the most accurate Spinosaur figures on the market. And like I said earlier, the pickings are really good if you want a Spinosaurus figure for your collection. Lots of options. So final thoughts on CollectA's new Spinosaurus. I really like this figure. For 40 bucks, you get a large, accurate looking representation of this species. I've always said it, CollectA is the perfect balance of accuracy and affordability. It's just a really nicely done figure. Just like how the scale detail came out, nice natural looking coloration, just a little splash of color with the red on the sail and the head crest. And I really like the swimming pose. It looks very natural looking. They definitely pull off the swimming pose better than some other companies, and it's just a really neat figure. And I think it's a nice contrast to having in shelves with your other Spinosaur figures, because most of them are, you know, in standing or walking poses. So just to have one next to it swimming to show how, you know, different the lifestyle of this animal is compared to most other dinosaur species. And I also have to say, you know, I got a few more figures from CollectA's 2022 lineup. I'm really liking the figures they produced this year. I was not keen on what they offered last year other than the Memenchisaurus, but you know, this year's figures so far have been all excellent, and I will be reviewing the other figures. I got the Pteranodon, what else? Edmontosaurus, and I got the last year's Dilophosaurus because I completely forgot about that figure when I was going through on Mini Zoo looking what I wanted to order. I saw it, and I guess it came out late in the year last year, and I completely forgot about it. So I will eventually be reviewing all those figures. I just kind of have to, you know, shuffle through all the Jurassic World Dominion figures coming out, because that's taking up a lot of time, you know, because you're going to post new stuff if you're on YouTube, if you want to get the views and be noticed. So I'm a slave to that right now, but I'll get up those reviews in a timely fashion. And like I said at the beginning of the review, if you want to order this figure, it's available right now from Mini Zoo. Link is down below in the description. And I'm sure Everything Dinosaur will eventually be getting these figures in probably in a month or so. So that will do it for the review. As always, if you're enjoying the content on this channel, show your support by hitting that subscription button just below the video. Each subscription helps out the channel tremendously and is greatly appreciated. And I'll see you guys for the next one.